anyone share about how they've been intentional about that relationship with their wife or partner that's really brought about fruit to that family situation, or good outcomes? I know that for me personally, at the moment we're going through, we're wanting to sort through some of those tough conversations about identity, who we are and what we want to be as individuals, then as a family, and then as a family, then as a community, right? So we're actually having those intentional conversations which, lead to complex things that you don't know, and as you're talking about them, you discover, you're doing self-discovery at the same time. Can any of you guys share something from your experience where you've been intentional with your partner? And the reason why I ask this is because we know that being a good father, especially in those early years, is about modeling love, care and support for your family, especially your partner or your wife, from where the baby came from. There was love that created a baby, one assumes, somewhat. So therefore, if we lose that, it's very easy, I think, in this day and age just to go, father, kid, father, kid, father, child, most important. I don't like to share my opinions on this because of my role, but I do feel like to be a good father, there's at least an element of love, care and support to your partner, whether you're together or not together, that would positively impact your child's development. I just thought I'd throw that out there to see what your guys' thoughts are on that from your experience, being maybe a bit more down the path.
For my wife and I, we had a case. I mean, there's been lots of sort of cases down through the years, but like for us recently, obviously, he's grade 3 now at school, but going through that whole school process, to be on the same page, to be on the same sort of thing with homework and all that sort of stuff to get going. And then you go through the conflicts where your child is now hanging out with 1,000 other kids who've got 1,000 other inputs and things like this. And then there's the conflict with that. To be on the same page with your wife, to sit down and go, okay, how are we going to handle this situation or that situation? It's a day-by-day process. But I think if you both sit down and understand that each situation can affect you and your wife differently, and you'll see it in that way, and there can be strengths when the other one's weak and vice versa. And so I think, like, say for instance, this whole COVID thing, we've come to a point, when it first kicked off, where schooling from home, I mean, that was incredible to do. And there was a website that my son's teacher put up, and my wife thought it was to stick up his work so that she could see it and mark it, but it wasn't. It was apparently a website where you stick up excellent work, and you want to show it off. So she's just sticking up random stuff of Kobe's up there, like spelling and all this stuff. Then people start going, oh, that's not special work, that's just average work. And she bursts into tears, and I'm like, okay, don't worry, it's going to be fine. We'll get on the same page. I've done the wrong thing for my son. This is not going to affect him. It's not going to affect him big picture. He doesn't even know what's happening. He's not on the way. So, what was important to her and blew her away, I was just like, forget about it. And that somewhat helped to be, that sort of balance, to be on the same page about what you want to do on purpose. But then again, and knowing that this journey, you might not even think twice about what your child's doing, but it may affect your partner tenfold, and just being sensitive to that. And then vice versa, it could affect you hard, where for them it's like, no, that's nothing. You don't need to worry about that. It's a good balance, and it always comes down to communication.
It's good.
Yeah, I was going to say something really similar, actually. So I'll just jump off from there, Ken. Communication and honest and open communication. When you are the most honest and vulnerable with your partner is usually when your relationship is in the healthiest space. And so my wife and I, we're trying to talk, even if it's like little things that have been nagging at us. Maybe we don't even realize, maybe it's all, subversive or whatever, and you don't even know that that's niggling at you. And then all of a sudden you realize just telling, oh, that's why I've probably been a bit off, because this is happening. And there's so many conflicts, as you say, Ken, that come up. So many issues, whether it is COVID, or whether it's schooling, or whether it's the neighbors yelling or something. Like, we're always talking about it. And what we've actually decided to do is make sure that we reserve some of our talk and our conflict resolution as a couple for having that in front of the kids as well. Like,
Wow.
we can invite them into the conversation in a sensitive way, because they're all different ages and stuff, but so that they can see you talking through stuff, not in an argumentative kind of way, but in a like, hey, like, we've got to solve this together. And inviting them in on those discussions can be really helpful in their development. Because there's this myth, or maybe it works for some people, I don't know, but in my family it doesn't work. Like, people who say, hey, never argue in front of the kids, and I know what they're saying. They're saying don't raise your voice and have all this kind of crazy stuff, but at the same time you need to have some kind of friction that's alive, so that you can see that you respect this other person's input, you respect this other person's opinion, and that we can work together with that. It's not just dominant.
It's good. Steve, I know you got something to say. It's itching. You can see it.
I mean, it's just from the beginning of the conversation when I was mentioning that, the most disagreements my wife and I will have will be about discipline for mainly our youngest son. He's had learning difficulties for a couple of years. Actually, I've got a proud dad moment I'm going to do on the show today, because he's done something at school. It's awesome. But he's very clever too. Very, he can be very deceitful, and I've always come from a position where I can see that, and other people can see it too, and they tell me, they're like, "Oh, really? Mum doesn't. Mum doesn't see it." And not that I'm right or she's wrong, but we obviously look at it in different ways. And so, the bulk of the disagreements will come from probably a reactional discipline that I've given. And then the problem is, then she will pull me up during that moment, and the children are present.
Yeah.
And so what can happen sometimes is not that anyone's, I don't want to use the word undermining, but as a father, and you've come up with some sort of disciplinary action, Mum disagrees with it and tells me about it in front of the children. And that's when I then have my son going, sort of thing. So, we've struggled to be on the same page a lot of the time. Most of the time we will go and have a discussion after it's happened and figure out how we can do that better next time. And, there's stubbornness on both ends for both of us, going, well, I didn't think I did anything wrong, and it'll fester for a while and we'll sort it out eventually. But being on the same page, because the children will just throw something at you, and you've never prepared for that.
No.
You've never discussed that they could, have thrown an apple at the wall. That's not something that ever came up. So you're winging this, you're winging it, and most of the time you're not on the same page, which is for us. The biggest thing I have found though is in a sort of a reactional way that I've done it, and maybe my wife has gone and picked up the fact that I overreacted in a certain way. As a father, to apologise,
that's good.
To actually say sorry to your children is a massive deal. You're this figure. Yeah. And to then get to their level and say, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. It's a big one. It's a big pill to swallow. And I've had to do it quite a few times. But I think that's obviously good for the children. It's good for the relationship then with the wife, obviously, because I've listened to her, and vice versa. She's had to do the same. So. Yeah.
Steve, I don't think there's anyone who does not resonate with that story, and I really appreciate you sharing that, because whether it looks for me the same way as it looks for you, or it looks something different, the principles of that are absolutely accurate, and that the key message that we are making our best decision at the time. Sometimes or often those best decisions with the information we have aren't the best, for everyone. And sometimes or often we have the opportunity, probably should I say, to say I'm sorry. And we don't have to say I'm sorry. And we know that when we don't say I'm sorry, it doesn't make the situation better. But we have the opportunity to say I'm sorry and get down on their level, which is, that's the relational element that, you've been so open and transparent with us to share that and vulnerable with us. And I just acknowledge that, because not every one of us are happy to actually go there with the realities of how challenging it really is, when the cameras are off, so to speak, or the microphones are off. And that's the stuff that helps us as fathers go, oh, yeah, he really shared a lot. I can reflect on that in my own life, and I can have a chat about that to my wife or my partner and to my kids, when they're old enough. But sharing that moment that that takes you away from being that perfect kind of model that you think they think of you, actually makes you a more perfect model of fatherhood by your vulnerability, which is something that I've had modeled with my father as well. And that's just that vulnerability to be able to let your children see yourself broken. And that's a special place, that's an intimate place that you can allow that to happen for the betterment of your family. And I think you've really touched on that nicely, Stephen. I think we can reflect on our relationships with our wives or partners, and just be able to go there, I guess, a little bit more, and be encouraged that you're doing that and a whole lot of other guys are doing that, and that's that's the essence of life that we can really aspire to, but also knowing really humanly that we have how badly and how often we stuff up is probably more than we'd like to say, but at the same time sharing that in a really safe environment allows us to do better and be better and feel better about what we're trying to do here.